Hey everyone! If you're a fan of the show, please head over to MikeYop.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MikeYopp.com. Thanks!
Hi, I'm Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week, coming to us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is an old friend of mine, Nate Menge. And Nate, among many things, is a longtime vegan, and so I thought it would be interesting this week to interview him not only about his philosophy on death and mortality, but also on how that applies to the treatment of animals and what we eat and do in our human lives here on Earth. So, Nate, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And as you probably have heard, we have a standard 3-question approach to all our interviews. We ask you to please tell us your name, not your name, your age, where you grew up, and then what generation you belong to, if any.
Okay. So my name is Nathan Menge. I am 41 years old. And, generation. I was actually just Googling this. I always forget the name of it. But there's like a sub-generation that some people posit that exists, the Xennials, between Generation X and Millennials, for the people who, because I'm not sarcastic and cynical, but I also know how to use technology significantly well, and it's like a foundational piece of my life, which is not necessarily true for a lot of Gen X people, and that's sort of the experience of being on that cusp. So I kind of like that sort of sub idea that people who like your foundational childhood is without the internet, but then your teenage and into like early adulthood is, and how that actually makes for completely different sort of behaviors, because you have the older style upbringing and like the disconnectedness and like just go outside and play. And then you have the connectedness of the internet in like late teens and college years. And then where I'm from. So the sort of irony on that is that I also grew up in rural Pennsylvania on a farm. And like just being like technically oriented from that life seems almost counterintuitive, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing because I met you in college at the University of Pittsburgh, and I think you were a sophomore, I was a freshman. That's not too relevant, but my point is, you were like literally the first person I'd ever met in my life who was from a farm, because I'm from like the Bay Area, and we have farms in California, tons of them, but they're not in that area. And so I'm as curious today as I was then, and I think our audience will enjoy hearing it. I mean, when you say you're from a farm, are we talking like literally like wake up and milk the cows, like there's a rooster, like to what extent are the stereotypes / what you experienced intersecting?
Okay, so the stereotype, particularly if you go older stereotypes, is more fitting, because it's small compared to like what a modern farm is now. Like modern farms, like these massive industrial, well, most of the time are these massive industrial undertakings of giant machines and like huge amounts of acreage. We did have a rooster that would crow, annoying little bastard. We had chickens at one point. We had ducks. We had Black Angus cattle, which were raised for beef. I didn't milk cows because that's like Holstein cows. That's your like typical black and white pattern cow. Those are the ones you milk. We didn't have those. We had the solid black. They're like a little bigger, a little more muscular, which you might expect from them being purposely bred for beef production. What else do we have? We had sheep and goats. We had horses, and all this on like not a ton of space really. I honestly don't know how many acres it was anymore, because that's just like the time in my life when I knew what an acre was and the time in my life that I was on the farm are like completely independent.
I'm actually really interested in this, especially now that we're like almost moving back towards like agrarian like lifestyles. Like people want to have their own small farms. There's a lot of like movements to kind of go back. So what of all the animals and of all the experiences you had with animals, which animal was your favorite?
Well, I mean, we had dogs, right? I mean, it's hard not to love dogs on sort of the top of the animal pyramid of things. But ignoring like the obvious like companion animals, goats are kind of they're both absolutely fantastic. Particularly baby goats are the absolute best, and it is one of the things I do miss. Adult male goats are possibly the most disgusting animals on the planet.
Do tell.
They will, I mean, it's just part of their mating rituals that they will urinate on their faces, and then this is what attracts the ladies, and like they will also come up and rub against you, like you human being, with their urine-soaked beard, and it's just like to this day, as a result of like the smell of goat, particularly like things like goat cheese that like are what I would encounter now in my life, like that smell, like. You could take the smell, like I don't know if you're familiar with the uniqueness of the smell of goat cheese, or if it's like just me and my own like personal mania.
No, I had it last night. I'm tracking.
So like take that smell of that cheese and like just multiply it by 1,000, and that's what like a male goat smells like. Like just so nasty. I mean, and to me at least, it's so nasty because I'm so familiar with it in the concentrated form. But yeah, but baby goats, oh man, baby goats are like the absolute best.
Oh, that's cool. And so then to kind of complete my like tour through I'm a city boy cliche fun questions, you're also like a programmer and you're I mean, this is me, you're my friend, but you're incredibly intelligent and you like work in programming and you're like of that mindset. So were you like the kid who like goes home from school to a farm and like does his tasks and then goes inside and like takes apart the Atari, or like what, like when did that other side of your personality take hold? All
right, I want to take the long way of explaining this because a piece of what's not apparent in the story is particularly my dad. So like I'm 6 years old and we bought this farm, and my dad is only 19 years older than I am. But so he buys this farm, we start running it. He's still working a day job, but then he's also going to night school while we're all doing this. So he proceeds to get himself a bachelor's in engineering, as well as then on to a master's degree after that, all while doing like raising me, operating the farm, and working day job. And it's actually him really that he brought home an Intel 286 that we built. Like, I mean, that's the processor in it, but we built a computer basically. Like way back, this is before like even like Windows 3.1 existed. Like I was running the original Microsoft DOS on it, I think, because it's so long ago. And that's sort of what really did it. Like we put that together, and then I started using a computer at the really like low fundamental levels on a routine basis because of that. And I guess, yeah, I guess I'll just state it cleanly. I hated the farm. I really would never ever think to go back to it. And like you had mentioned how there's like a move to go back to that for some people, and like I am assuming that those are only people who have never worked on a farm. It is the least rewarding work you could ever do. Like monetarily, it's unrewarding. If you were trying to be off grid, I guess it becomes a thing, but like it is. So some of this slots into what I mean, like me foundationally, I'm vegan, and it slots into that is like it's really hard to maintain a non-objectifying opinion of animals when you're going to raise them for slaughter, and like so there's just like kind of these obstacles and these things you have to like do things with every day to like get your investment out of them. And I mean, I don't like that thinking at all, but it's like I feel like you really have to do it to run a farm effectively, because you care too much. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine what people, if there are legitimate farmers who care about their animals in a real personal way and then send them to the slaughter. Like, I have no idea like what kind of like mind that would allow for that, really. But I digress, I guess.
No, you don't digress, and actually, you're like leading the podcast in the exact direction I wanted, and if you're 100% touching on what I wanted to ask you about, because these are the questions that I've always wondered. And I mean, I'm going to speak about you real quick, and then you can tell me if you think I'm full of it. But you're like a very kind and sensitive person. You're very like sensitive to the feelings of others. You notice when people are in pain. And I remember early on in college, you sticking up for people when like no one else was. And that was always, you know, something I was magnetized towards, that sort of behavior and those kind of people. So I've watched you, quote unquote, grow up just like you've watched me grow up from like an 18-year-old to a 40-year-old. And in that period when you became vegan, I remember just thinking like, holy cow, pun intended, this guy was not only like on a farm when I met him like 2 years after removed from that, and I'm from the Bay Area where people are vegans, and so it blew my mind that like you became one without, like, from my knowledge, any sort of like peer group or like pressure. So can you actually talk about like the precise moment where you like heard that term, liked that term, and wanted to explore it?
I don't know if I can, honestly. I don't really remember. I think it was a little bit of the sort of like punk rock crowd. I think that's where I was first exposed to it, and I think my first initial thoughts was like, like, sure, I guess, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like super enthralled by the idea of it, and I guess it's kind of worth mentioning, like, the way I got into veganism was like realizing I was one day, like, not really planning to. Part of it too is just not having money in school. Like, I was eating beans and rice and like, you know, all the cheap staples, and like I wasn't buying milk. Like, I was drinking water and cooking rice and beans, like 3 meals a day, basically. Not a little bit, only eating like 1 meal a day as well. So, but like, yeah, and I think I just like kind of realized I was at one point, and I didn't really like, it wasn't like an epiphany or anything. It was just like, well, like, all right, cool, whatever. I'm just gonna do this now. And like, then I considered like doing it for like actually talking about it, like, and like associating myself with that identity, I guess, a little bit.
Well, and so I'm about to start asking you the heavy-hitting questions about death and stuff, but the one last thing I want to say for our audience, because this is a audio resource, you would think by Nate's description that he's some like scrawny guy who like, you know, just all skin and bones. You're actually like muscular, and you lift weights and you work out and you hash, which is something we probably don't have time to get into, but it involves running and drinking. So like, I think that's very important, because I think a lot of people very, very aggressively and negatively stereotype vegans as like not getting enough protein, not having enough. So real quick, I don't want to get too far into it, but can you explain like if that's easy, or is that like difficult to be a vegan who actually like lifts weights and, you know, exercises a lot and does those kind of things?
I think we have the advantages of the first world now. Well, not that we ever weren't in the first world, but just the things that are available in the first world right now. Like really, really protein-rich food all the time is available, like, constantly. You know, like you're undoubtedly aware of like Impossible and like Beyond Burgers, and like those things are so freaking fantastic. Like, the predecessor of vegan burger like things were like these patties of like vegetables, like kind of like put in a blender and formed into a roughly patty shape, which were really terrible, like in hindsight, but I would eat them. I mean, the ideal nutrition you want for working out, I don't think is available in a whole food form for vegans. Like, you can eat a lot of protein. Like, it's not hard. It is hard to eat a lot of protein and not also eat a lot of starch for vegans if you're eating whole foods. Like, and I'm considering that as being a more healthy lifestyle in general, which I try to do. But then there's things like Beyond Burgers, which I throw in there as well. You know, so I think it's totally doable. And I think it's important to note that there's a lot of people in the third world who are, and this is actually something I do want to talk about, but in my opinion, are vegan, because I think there's an incorrect understanding of what it means to be vegan. And I actually looked it up so I'm abiding by your rules of not having a computer or anything in front of me. But I looked it up right before this call just so I would have it to paraphrase in my mind. But the definition, as was put down by the Vegan Society, which was founded in London, I think, in like early 1900s. But it's the philosophy of abstaining from animal exploitation and animal products as much as practical. And it's the as practical part that I think is really important. I have an anecdote of this person I knew through martial arts. She went over to Africa to do Peace Corps work, and she was vegan. And I remember when she came back, she said, "Well, I didn't keep vegan. I was there." It's like, she did until her hair started to fall out. And I was like, "No, like, listen, the people there are eating goat products, like mostly milk. Like, they're not actually slaughtering a whole lot of goats. They're mostly using them for goat milk. because the goats can eat anything. Like that's one of the properties of being a goat. You can literally survive on brambles. But, like they're using goat products because like they basically have to get all their dietary needs. And I don't see that as counter to the vegan philosophy. I see that as in parallel with it. Like the as practical part is a really important part. So we get caught up in the implementation in the first world, and that is mistakenly used as the definition of it, when I think the idea and the philosophy of it is a much more abstract thing, and it's much more personal. One of the things I really enjoy about veganism is that there isn't really, despite there being a vegan society, there isn't a church of it. Like there isn't a holy person telling us these are the commandments of veganism. I interpret it the way I'm going to interpret it. And if someone else interpreted it differently, actually yourself, for instance, I know you eat fish, and you and I have briefly talked about how like you feel like they don't suffer, they don't feel pain, because they lack the pineal system. Is that what it is? Limbic system? One of those systems.
It might be the CNS. I don't know. I learned it from Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and so it's probably wrong. But
they do have simpler brains than even like reptiles and like insects too. Like insects is really so anyway. If you feel that they don't experience pain, they don't suffer, like that isn't in itself. I mean, I wouldn't. If I were you, I wouldn't go around calling yourself vegan in like public, and like, like I eat fish and I'm vegan, but like, it's your own thing to interpret and do as you wish with, and live within the confines of your own interpretation of the true philosophy, and not get caught up in the implementation that someone else decided to do, and like think that that's the definition.
Yeah, I really like that. Don't get caught up in the implementation. I think that could apply to a lot of things that people argue about right now and probably will argue about in the future. With that in mind, I think it is time to ask you the standard question, which is, what do you actually think happens when you die? And then we're going to apply that to morality. So for you, I actually have a two-part question, which is, what do you actually think happens when you, Nate Menge, die? But also, does that differ from what happens when an animal dies? Are animals' deaths different than humans?
No, I think. Okay, I'll start with the first question. What I think happens when you die, I think it's really terrifying, because I don't think death is as clean cut as we like to think of it. Unless you're asleep, I guess maybe, then you might maybe just tunnel out, and then like I guess the primary things would be that the neurons in your brain stop firing to trigger your heart beating, to keep the circulatory system refreshing, all the things that need refreshing your body, and like then the decay cycle kicks in. That's all that happens for us as animals, and that's all that happens with every other animal in my mind.
Is this a belief you've pretty firmly held your whole life, or was this like in the middle of your life you switched to this?
I wouldn't say that I switched to it. I think definitely being exposed to a lot of death, which I guess not even a lot, but I mean just growing up on a farm with particularly a animal producing farm for slaughter, there is a lot of things dying. So death is definitely a thing I was kind of aware of from a really early state of my life. But then also just, education, biology, those sorts of things is what's colored it to the point where it is now. I think I would probably, also a bit of, well, no, it's all biology, I guess. But yeah, I think if I didn't have the education I have, I think I could see myself meandering in the direction of some sort of mysticism, but because I have it, I don't, I guess.
That's interesting. So education, I'm going to assume higher education, dispelled the possibility for a belief in mysticism, but what precisely in education was it? Was it like Darwinism specifically? Was it some sort of like...
Well, I actually want to go back to, you said you assume higher education. I think that's not really it either. Because education doesn't end when you leave school, right? Like I don't actually think I would have thought this or said a lot of these things to you when we were in college. Not because I didn't think them then, but I didn't think them as well defined. Like I had nebulous ideas that just like the education of life, I guess, has continued to color in the edges on them, to the point that I don't know that I could even have this conversation 20 years ago, honestly. Like, I don't think I would have been able to intelligently lay out the way I thought about things, because I don't think I had it. I think I had clouds of thoughts, and now I have structures, and I can build and like analyze those structures now. So that's the education. It's all of life, really, like getting to this point. And like, so who knows where I'll be in another 20? Like, I guess ideally I'll have a or a deeper introspection on these ideas. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
And so what about going back to your childhood? Did you, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I have to ask it to be fair. Did you actually personally slaughter an animal at any point?
Yes.
Okay. And so
not for actual beef. I have used a rifle to put down sick animals.
Okay. So only when they were sick.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
I mean, like, and sick at that level is really bad. I don't know if that needs clarification or not, but
No, it does. It does need it. Yeah, please.
like, this is like an animal that is about to die, and we're just gonna expedite the process.
No, that hits home for a million reasons, but I think that's a very important distinction. So would you say it's fair then to say that you've been an animal lover all your life, or an animal sticker-upper for? Like, how would you classify your relationship to animals?
No, I mean, most of my life, I would say I hated animals. Like, I really hated the farm. I hated taking care of them. I didn't like them dying. And it's not like them going to slaughter didn't reduce the work, like, because that just meant either we were bringing in more somewhere else, or we were going to breed up a next round. Like, it's farm work is a never ending toil. So I didn't like animals for a huge part of my childhood, into my early college time. I think, like, I had to get away from it really to stop disliking animals in general. I still hate horses. Although I won't go into that because that's a whole other topic. But yeah, so it took getting away from it and having it be more of a abstract thing for me to go back to liking animals. I didn't really want to have dogs either. My spouse did, and I don't want to have a dog anymore either, because I've gone through 4 of them since leaving home, and that's too much. That's why I have a child, essentially. Like, oh God, I almost like said a jinxie thing. Like, hopefully nothing bad ever happens there. There's wood here. I'm knocking on it, but he will outlive me, and I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Well, and actually, it's funny because you mentioned it earlier, but I thought it was really cool that it may not have been cool when you're young to have a father who's only 19 years older than you, but it must be really nice now to have someone who's like still young and healthy and robust.
He doesn't take as good enough care of himself as I think he should. So I also don't see them. I mean, they closed that farm down while I was in college, and they moved to Florida. Even if they were still there, like, that's 4 hours east. Though I might see them more often than I do now, because it's a whole deal to get down to Florida or up from Florida here. So I don't see them that often. And it's interesting, like, because like at the time when I was a kid, I always thought of him as a grown-up doing the grown-up things. But like, if you think about it, he was a 20-year-old, like, putting himself through college, and like he has a really just impressive career. So it's almost like, I mean, to, I guess kind of to your point, like, he is very much like a peer to me now, I feel, despite being my father, because he is only 19 years older than I am. And like, I can look at him and like look at what he's done in his career and like be really just impressed with the things he's done, and like be trying to follow in that path to a certain extent. Although he works way harder than I do, which this is another aspect of growing up a farm, is I don't want to work hard anymore. I did that for the age of 6 to 18, and now I'm all about maximizing the dollars per effort rather than maximizing the dollars.
I totally understand, and I actually think this has been a fascinating interview. It's not over, but I'm like learning little things about you that I never knew that makes so much sense. And for some reason, the topic of your father like is relevant to me, because we talk about like aging and dying and everything, and I think that when you talked about like visiting parents and stuff, I'm curious, now that you have a son, so you are also a father, like, does it compel you to want a different, or to like make the relationship with your own father like stronger, or does it not even touch on that?
Yeah, we didn't have a great relationship when I was a child, I don't think. I mean, he did all these things, but I think it cost him in a personal like enjoyment of day-to-day life. I think it really cost him those early years, like the span of my childhood. Once he was through all of that, including like through me going to college, And particularly because while I was in college was when he really started to be successful. I think he really changed as a person and became, in general, a better person, or at least to me, more approachable and less stressed, I guess. I think a huge part of it was there was a ton of stuff he was doing which, induced a whole lot of stress on him that I don't think he was really even necessarily fully cognizant of the way it affected him. So anyway, like all that combined, I have a much better relationship with him now than I did as a child.
And so kind of like moving into that, like, so I like your view on death. I don't share it, but I also don't disagree with it. I think there might be something in addition to it is how I would explain it. But that's the only reason I'm mentioning this is that there's something sweet about your take because it makes life on Earth more special, in my opinion. And I think it would make me nicer to other people to believe in that. So I'm curious, does your belief actually affect how you treat others, or do you think you just inherently treat others the way you do and it doesn't matter?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think anyone inherently treats anyone particularly well. For me, at least, it is definitely a thing I try to do, and I'm not always successful at it. But yeah, so I think you have to know how you want to treat people to really treat people. Wow, this is tautological, I guess. I was just going to say, like, to treat people the way you want to treat them, you have to know how you want to treat them, I guess. But I guess that also is somewhat meaningful in a sense. Like, if you're not thinking about how you treat people, you're not going to be treating them in a way that you particularly want to. You're reactive. You're not proactive. So, and even that, I feel like I'm more reactive than proactive a lot of the time. I try, but like, I am also easily annoyed, I guess, would be the most succinct way to put it.
Well, it's funny because we go in and out of contact over the years, and we recently got into contact, and we got into like 2 brief arguments pretty quickly, and I kept laughing because I was like, oh, this is what it's like when we were friends when we were younger too, and I think it's because we share that. Like, it's not just you, it's a two-way street, and
I think it's everyone, honestly. Like, it's so rare to meet someone who legitimately tries to treat people well. And I mean, not that you're seeking it, but I feel like you're one of the better examples of people I know. Like, yeah, I think you go out of your way to try and treat people better, and like consciously. Some people just do it, and I can love those people. Like, there are really a few people out there I can think of that absolutely do it, and I don't think that they try to do it. I think like it is the nature of their being to interact with people this way, and those are great people.
So now you're getting into my wheelhouse because I too admire those people, and I'm very glad that you put a line between me and them because I agree, and I'm just saying that to my audience as well. I think these people, quote unquote, who are naturally just like nice and good and make us all feel good, I mean, they're basically saints in my opinion. So I am curious, it begs a question from you of all people, which is, you said you almost get mystical, but then you don't. When you meet these people, is that one of those moments where you almost start to think maybe there is something beyond this, or is it just, like I asked you about yourself, inherent to there?
Not quite what you're asking exactly, but like I could legitimately believe in auras off of a few of the people I've met. That like just being around this person, like I don't think they're even doing anything. They're just somehow projecting like a positive aura around themselves that makes me like want to be there and like hang out with them. Like that is a legitimate thing, and I don't know how to explain that exactly because I don't know that there is. I'll put it this way. Actually, definitely the way I would like to phrase it. I don't have the proper education into psychology and psychiatry probably to understand what's happening there. You know what I mean? Like they're doing something, whether they're conscious of it or not, and I'm not conscious of what it is. But I think something's happening that they are able to do this. Like some way of their mannerisms and like the way they react to people and they react to other social stimuli, like is doing this, I think.
Well, we are running out of time, but I always give my guests a last chance to just speak their mind to the internet. There's definitely a lot of people listening to this, so whatever you want to say, you have the floor.
One of the things I think, so going back to veganism and going back kind of to where animals are as a thing that you should treat well and like have regard for. One of the ways in which animals differ from us, or particularly mammals don't differ from us that much. Like they have the same brain structures we do. The things that are different are the size of the parts of them. And of particular note to me is that the thing that really separates humans apart, and I think the other apes as well, it's not like the amygdala or the hippocampus or the other parts of the brain that do emotions. it's the analytical part, the cerebral cortex, I think it is, the big gray wrinkly stuff. That's where it is. Like, I don't think animals are free of emotions. I think they are as emotional as we are. And I've seen this, like, growing up on a farm. I've seen, mother cows crying when their babies are taken away, and that sort of thing. What I don't think they have is the ability to necessarily contemplate their emotions. And, like, they're not going to label their feelings of remorse as remorse or sadness or anything. But I don't think that means that they don't feel them.
Nate, I'm touched by your last answer. I thought it was very profound, like very thought-provoking. I have not really thought about two of the nuances you made, not only to mention just the overall concept of how arrogant we are about our emotions and separating it from theirs. So thank you, Nate Menge from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for helping us put another nail in the coffin. To those of you at home listening along, if you want to do us a favor, please review us on Apple Podcasts and please subscribe and maybe share it with a friend. Either way, we're thankful that you're listening to us and Coffin Talk. And again, my name is Mike Oppenheim, and we will see you soon.
Walking alone when I walk in